Let me get out my glass here and chuck it, because a new ship has sailed. This is Hey Harold, and actually the title for once doesn't really suggest anything, other than that it's a Harold episode. But, it takes a little while before you get that sense, because it starts off with Arnold and his friends sitting at the lunch table, and they get an invitation from Rhonda to a party. She's throwing a party at her house, and she's decided to be nice and invite the entire class, plus some 6th grade girls, because we need to fill out the background somehow. Everyone goes, although Harold's a little reluctant to go. It's the typical Harold whine, I don't want to do this thing. But through some reverse/self-imposed psychology, he winds up talking himself into going. And very quickly, he loses interest in the party. After munching on some food, he goes out onto the balcony where he bumps into Big Patty. She's by herself, like she always is, and she's a little bummed that no one seems to be talking to her or wants to dance with her. And Harold starts talking to her, and after a while, they start to hit it off really well. So, the following day, they hang out, and they agree that they're going to sit together at lunch. Well, actually, Harold asks her to sit with him at lunch, and Big Patty agrees. And all seems to be going well, but unfortunately Stinky and Sid spot Harold hanging out with Big Patty, and they immediately start teasing and making fun of him, and hurt and discouraged Harold says he doesn't really care about Big Patty, it doesn't really mean anything, and he basically goes against his promise to Big Patty and just ends up sitting with Stinky and Sid, leaving Big Patty all by herself. And as they're having lunch, Sid and Stinky continue to tease Big Patty, and eventually Harold just gets fed up with it. He calls both kids out on teasing her. Then Harold goes over and sits with Big Patty, and she overheard the whole thing, so she forgives him. And they live happily ever after, presumably until the next episode when this thing is completely ignored and forgotten. Although hopefully not, because if Pherald can be consistent since that carnival episode, then hopefully Big Harold, that's what I'm calling the ship, can be too. And overall, I really, really enjoyed this episode. Man, Harold's come a long way, hasn't he? Remember when I started doing these vlogs and I didn't like him at all? I found him one note of his voice. Hey, Arnold! Yeah, that. I just remember when I thought he was this really shallow, pea-sized brain, obnoxious voice, constant teasing character. And now that we've spent a few episodes spotlighting him and we've really gotten to know him, I'm starting to like Harold more and more. He whines, he complains, but he's not a bad kid. He just doesn't know any better. And whenever we get a Harold episode, it shows him learning better, which in this case, don't let other people's opinions of you influence your actions. What I love about this episode is that Harold learns this lesson without any outside influence. Almost every action that Harold takes in this episode, he makes on his own. For the most part, he decides to go to the party on his own. No one tells him to talk to Big Patty. No one tells him to start dating Big Patty. And no one tells him to stand up to her at the end. In a typical Hey Arnold episode, there'd be a point when Arnold would tell Harold, give him the moral conscience, the advice, hey, maybe you should do this. But no, that never comes. Arnold barely has any lines, and it's really satisfying to watch Harold learn and grow on his own. So kudos to you, show, for doing this. Please keep it up. I love it. Speaking of characters who my opinions have changed on, I'm really starting to think less and less of Stinky and Sid. Between Arnold betrays Iggy and this episode, they're starting to become the real bullies of the show, which is weird because when I started watching Hey Arnold, I thought Harold was going to be one of the big bullies. He looked like a bully, but he's not bad, he's just not that bright. But yeah, the way Stinky and Sid just treat others, just, ugh. But they do sort of reflect a great reflection of the theme of, do what makes you happy. You shouldn't feel ashamed to like or hate a person or a form of media based on how you think others are going to perceive you. To quote Star versus the Force of Evil, it's not criminal to be individual. If people literally made their entire decisions on what they did or what they took interest in based on how they thought other people would perceive them, you could say goodbye to the brony community. Because that entire community is based off a bunch of people, myself included, who watch a show that was targeted towards girls, but a bunch of people recognized, hey, the show may be targeted towards girls, but it's actually good. and we watch it and you don't give a hoofs what anyone else thinks. You could apply this to anything, like any cartoon, any book, or any person. Or if you want to take it in a broader spectrum, like LGBT. So yeah, great episode to teach kids what to do. Poor Big Patty, though. Not only does no one sit with her, but everyone just talks about her behind the back. And I know people who've been in those boats, and yeah, it sucks. The pacing of this episode was really good. It was kind of similar to New Kid and Olga's Boyfriend. Those two episodes are other episodes where I felt there was a lot going on, and I was wondering, like, how are you going to wrap this up in, like, 10, 11 minutes? And surprisingly, they managed to wrap it up well. This episode also kind of took me back to elementary school, back when boys and girls weren't always great friends. Just merely sitting together sparked gossip. You didn't even have to hold hands. Just merely sitting next to someone was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, they're sitting together. It's really weird looking back on it, because as you get older, especially in high school and college, that division between boys and girls, it kind of goes away. Like, it's perfectly normal for girls and guys to hang out together, and you almost forget there's a time and a place where that's just something that's considered abnormal. As far as the party at Rhonda's house is concerned, I feel like it did a great job of capturing what school dances are like. Like, they're fun, and they also kind of capture the idea that everyone kind of wants to dance with someone for the most part. But oftentimes, people are just too shy to ask. It was also kind of interesting at the party just watching and seeing which characters coupled up with who. Like, it's nice to see Gerald and Phoebe are still interacting, still together. Like, that ship is still afloat. Nice, nice, nice. I was a little surprised to see Curly and the girl with the flower shirt together. I don't know, I never saw it, but hey, if the show wants to ship them, go ahead. I mean, this was nowhere near as awkward as the Love Tunnel episode where everyone just scrambled to get into a boat with someone they were okay with. I had in my miscellaneous notes, at first I thought it was a little weird that Rhonda would invite Big Patty, considering she's the outcast, but then I figured, you know what, I'm not going to nitpick. I mean, the writers wanted a Big Patty episode and led to a really solid episode. If you want to rationalize it, then we can just say that Rhonda just wanted to be inclusive and include everyone. And then there was also this one little thing that I found a little off, which is that during the party, there's like a shot where you see Lyra and she's just kind of staring with her back turned at the wall. She doesn't seem to be doing anything, interacting with anyone, and I'm wondering if that was an animation error or just me just needlessly nitpicking. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say on this episode. It was, again, another really solid episode. As always, I'll see you next time, where we'll continue season 3, and hopefully the show will continue its streak of being pretty good. I'll see you then.